Hey guys, it's that time again. It's time for the show on social, the show that talks about everything that has to do with live professional video on social media. Oh, I guess we can extend that to not only just live professional video, but edited professional video, photographs, anything that has to do with a social presence. I'm your host, Stephen Haywood. I'm also joined with Marty McPadden. Welcome, sir.
How are you? I feel like doing my Barbara Walters impression. This is 2020. Although she doesn't talk like that. Yeah, I don't know.
She did do that. She did do that. What they played that on 2020 or not, well, the year 2020 when they did the drop down, but they played her saying this is 2020.
Yeah, I think they had Sherry O'Terry, who used to be on Saturday Night Live. She does a Barbara Walters impersonation. I think they had her on and she was doing the impersonation. It was hilarious. I saw that bit. So, yep, it's finally
Yeah.
2020.
So this is where we're at right now, and Jeff actually he's rebooting his computer as we speak. So hopefully we'll get him on and get him going here. So in the meantime, Marty, let's talk a little bit about 2020 and our expectations. We know the big shows are coming up. NAB, we've got CES in full swing right now. A lot of really cool stuff in VR right now. So I'm kind of curious as to see where you are thinking that people need to spend time when they're doing live video. Where do they need to spend it on social media? Like, what is there a certain platform? Is there a certain is there a certain area? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I think it's way more. I and we've had this discussion, Stephen, for a couple years now, and I think we're a little ahead of the curve here. But anytime you get into these scenarios, right? So we could talk about live video. This current iteration of live video probably started when it really became viable on mobile devices, and that started with Periscope. And this was back what, like 2015, 2016, something like that,
Hmm.
4 years ago. Um, so it really kind of the second, like, you're the first wave, with Justin TV going way back when it first started. And
Yep.
if Preto's still in the chat room there, he's first wave too. He goes 20 years back, and kind of making up his own way. So we got some pioneers here. But really that wave with the mobile devices, and as soon as it got to a mobile device where almost anybody could do it, then it became very, accessible to everybody, and everybody just went live, and the novelty was, "Go live, doesn't matter, just show everything," right? And then we started talking about this, we go, "Well, this is obviously here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's becoming very accessible. So what's the next logical step?" And we talked about it very early on. Quality in every respect is really where it's gonna be at, I think, 2020 and going forward. And what do I mean by that? Not just technical. I mean, I think a lot of people point to our stuff and we have everything nice and neat. We use the fancy green screens and all that stuff. We have the fancy microphones. And this has taken us a number of years to get to this level. But I'm mainly talking about just quality of presentation and content.
Hmm.
When we talk about live, we've talked about this before, having the reason to go live, thinking about it, doing the pre-work. And to me, I think that's where it's really missing. That's really the big opportunity, is not just being able to push the button, going live on your device, but thinking about what are you going to do, having a little bit of planning. I mean, you don't have to do it all the way. It doesn't have to be completely scripted, but plan it out. Know exactly what we talk. We talk all the time, right? With these shows, we know a couple weeks in advance what we're gonna do. We have a little pre-show, we talk about it. So we go on, well, at least we know what we're gonna be doing. Now, we don't
Yeah.
script it out,
Right.
so it has that conversational feel, but, I think that's really where the opportunity is. And even, like, when, working on a new look for the show, stuff like that. The details, how's it look? What are we trying to communicate? That type of thing. The little details,
Yep.
I think being a big difference because there's so much content out there. How do you separate yourself?
Well, and that's something that we're going to talk about in the future. But what about our future Emmy Award winner, Mr. Jeffrey Fitzgerald? What's your thoughts? I mean, what where do you see video in 2020? I mean, if you had to tell the audience right now, Jeff, you had to tell them where they need to focus their attention on their video content in 2020, what would you say?
I would say this. I think that, it was great, Marty, hearing the look back with Justin TV and Steve. I know you've been doing it for years. I think of other, early live streamers like Jeff Adams. And so you get into this for 5 or 10 years, and you begin to think, hey, I'm kind of an old veteran, and we're kind of in the season. But I think there's a difference between vocational length of time and industry length of time. We're still in the infancy of what live streaming looks like. And it's not because of the technology, it's because we've now got a population of people who are learning how to become content creators. Traditionally, it was people like Marty, myself, you, who were behind the scenes doing this the traditional way, and we grew up in it over a long time. So I think what we're really seeing is a lot of people do the typical, double box conversations. And there's a lot of mobile streaming and things. And those are all very important components. But I think where we're really going to go eventually is very much toward the stories that we see the way television has revealed them, where you're showing, you're not telling, you're actually bringing the viewer with you on that particular experience. And it's not just me holding my phone and it's kind of bouncy, but there's a definite intentionality about what you're doing, how you're producing it, and in a manner where your character arc, where you're going with your story, at the end of that show what you wanted to communicate. Now, in live streaming, like Marty said, we don't always script it out word for word, but you don't have to. But it's just like Google Maps. You eventually want to know where you're going, even if you're
Yeah.
going to take one route or the other, right? So,
No, that's absolutely true. And one of the things, like Marty brought up a good point with this, because I'm starting a new journey. We're only like we're going on episode number 7 of the retro gaming show where we focus on arcades and things like that in that space. We brought in all types of quality. I mean, you know me, I'm kind of a stickler for audio and video, but some of these guys are calling in with their phones. We're getting call-ins. We're getting people joining us via their phones. You want to talk about a workout, man? I got people dropping off because their Wi-Fi is not good during a show, and I'm adding them constantly, and we kind of joke about it. But when I say it's a knockdown, drag out affair, it is. But you know what? The content is there, and that's what keeps people locked in. It didn't matter all the technical glitches that we had; they were locked in because of the content. And we said in pre-show, we went 4 hours with 17,000 plus people watching and commenting in the chat rooms going 90 miles a minute. That's a new experience for me in that aspect because I'm used to being able to keep up with comments. I'm used to, um, so I think you guys are spot on. Having content is key, and also I would say collaboration. You got to have people that are on your show that have some kind of knowledge. In any video that you're doing, you also have to have knowledge. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to have some form of knowledge in what you're talking about. But I think those types of things are key. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Or thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to and kind of take this in a interesting direction. Stephen, we talked a little bit earlier in the week, and this kind of lead into this discussion about your show and about how you approach a show. And this is a good way to think about going forward for content creators. In the past, we've seen a lot, especially with live, the importance of a lot of people with the importance of being first,
Mm,
even at the expense of being correct or being accurate or being complete, is and then ended up getting a lot of wrong information out there on the air. And that doesn't really, especially if you're trying to build an audience, trying to build a reputation, I think that could, you think you may be out there first, you may make a splash, and you may get some viewers, but actually in the end, I think long term, I think it hurts your reputation. I think that's a big thing too, is as this whole industry matures and as it becomes accessible to a lot more people to create live video, reputation and authenticity and accuracy and and I'm looking for the word, and trustworthiness, that type
integrity.
of thing where you want to be counted on as someone that's an authority that you can count on, that when you so we were talking about this before, where you may be like, say if it's gaming, you may be talking about a particular issue, maybe there's a new game coming out and or rumor or whatever, and getting the right information out there. And I know with your show, you have really kind of grown that show and have gotten the attention of the manufacturers, and you actually have the sources come on.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing is working toward that where going right to the source and working on making sure that you have the information accurate where people your community actually believes in you and can trust you. And again, that's not an overnight thing. That's a process. But at the expense of maybe you're not necessarily first. But I think in the long run, especially if you want to be, build a community and do this for the long haul, trustworthiness and authenticity and making sure that people actually can believe in you and trust you is a big key. Like if you're gonna start endorsing things or doing reviews, they gotta know like, oh, Steven says it's good, and I trust him, and you know I know it's gonna be good. I'm willing to try it, and that benefits everybody. So I think that's a big key in this whole thing. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that.
I think that you're, like, totally spot on with that, Marty, and one of the things that we talk about when we talk about authenticity and all these words that were kind of prevalent in today's social landscape, one of those words is originality, right? I think that you have to be yourself, and this has been a struggle for me personally because, a lot of my friends know I've never met a microphone I didn't like. I was, playing with video cameras as a kid. My mom was a TV producer, grew up in it. And I learned over the years that I, would take on the role of being a sportscaster or an anchor, whatever those things I wanted to look like. These days, that's artificial, and you gotta literally learn how to rip that part of who you think you might be out and just be you in front of a camera, and it's hard being vulnerable, being maybe who you are not sure you are in some ways, and so with that originality, it's very important to understand what your identity is in the whole process. What is your why? What is the genesis for why you're wanting to do something to begin with? What is your identity in that, and how do you wanna really release that to the world so people can really learn what your frequency is and tune into your station week to week and really understand who you are. But definitely a big believer in originality is what is going to separate you from the millions and millions of people now who are producing content.
I think, and I just put in the chat room about what does the audience think about what you have to do to stand out in 2020, and we'll see what comes up from that. But I think everybody's looking for the next high definition camera, 4K, 8K, the next whiz bang feature that they can do with their setup or anything like that, or how cool they can make their studio look. And more as I've been going down this journey, I used to think that way. I used to think, man, if I could just tighten up my production, if I could, streamline everything, make everything awesome, it's on. But now I'm finding more and more if you spend more time on content, less time on the look and feel, that's going to separate you from everybody else. Yeah, you should have quality. I mean, people got to be able to hear you and see you. But I mean, I noticed when I go live just to do like a new feature in the arcade cabinet that they put out, you know, I just go live with Wirecast. I sit there with my Stream Deck. I switch between the game screen. I capture with an NDI source, and I do a double box shot with just me and the gameplay, and I interact with the chat room the whole time. And I'll have 150 people sitting there watching me essentially show off a feature in the game and answer questions, or and some of our audience even watches those streams, and they're very simplistic. There's no monster whiz bang features. I mean, we're just going back between a static shot like this, no lower third, to a split screen with me and the gameplay. And occasionally I'll go to the full screen of the gameplay. So it's like, I guess what I've seen, we're looking just like Jeff. You started doing some shows, the video in the now. Um, you're, or what is it? The Video Authority, something to that extent.
Oh,
I'm
video is recorded on LinkedIn Live. Yeah, I'm working on a whole new season, and I'm about to launch Ingenious TV, bringing your next big network connection, people you wanna know. So, yeah,
Well,
so I got a
so
couple
what are you
projects.
doing to make that stand out from the rest? Like, what are you doing to make it not just another talk show? I'm not asking you to divulge any secret information, but how did you approach that?
There's no secrets. I mean, the reality is that you've got to find something that somebody wants to see, right? Whether it's a person, whether it's an experience, those kind of things. And so, if we take, this show that it will be debuting in the next 3 weeks in Genius TV, the idea here is that I find great people that really have a story to tell, and I want to do not just the basic interview, but I want to do a little story up front, like you would see typically on, 60 Minutes, that kind of thing, a little 1 or 2 minute little bio profile, and help set that narrative for somebody. Because the thing that really matters in social media, especially, is that people do not have a lot of time, and we approach it as content creators many times like we're NPR or a podcast where we can talk for hours and we've got all day. But the viewer's sitting there in between many different things, and they're looking at it like CNN, like, hey, give me the big takeaway points. If I like what I'm hearing, I want to hear more. I can go find it somewhere else or at a later date. And so some of it is timing, some of it is pace. But I'm a really big believer too, guys, that this is the year of collaboration. If you really want to stand out, it is working with other people that are similar like you, just like what we're doing today, but doing that in other places with other entities because we've all got our own identities, our own networks. A good friend of mine, Rob House, who I'm going to be collaborating with on something really unique here in the next couple weeks, loves to say your net worth is your network, and I think that's really valuable and really incredible because people love being around other people, and you learn and grow, and you can share, and I think that really adds to the value mix.
And Marty, I want to get to you here in a second, but before I do that, we're talking about all these great tools and ways that you can up your game and step up in all that you do. And one of the things we want to do right now is thank the folks over at Telestream. Telestream's been instrumental in allowing us. We're on our 30-second episode of the On Social show, and one of the things that we want to kind of present to you guys, if you head over to telestream.net/on social, you can check out the brand new Wirecast Gearbox. Now, everybody on this panel, we can all talk about this. We have Wirecast gear. We love it. We use it as part of the production here. But you can find out all kinds of information with the Wirecast gear unit, the costs, the breakdown, the specs, why you would even want one of these boxes. And I'm going to have some videos coming out in the future when mine arrives here just shortly with the upgraded box because I have the first generation. um, this is really a fantastic choice when you want to embark to that next level. We do offer on the website the Wirecast software that you can download for your PC or Mac. But guys, we got to say, I mean, the Gearbox, all intents and purposes, you could set it up and go no matter where you're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of having a box like the gear is the fact that it's all in one, everything's encompassed. You take that in tandem with something like PTZ Optics and you've got the robotic cameras. One or two people now can cover a multi-camera event. I was using the same setup for our county debates here in October, and it worked flawlessly. And that's the thing you want is you want that reliability and you want the ability to move in, move out, nobody gets hurt, come out with a great live stream. And it's a good product.
And Marty,
Yeah,
you've been using
I'll
it
add
too.
to that as well. I think the difference is, and I saw the comment from Alfredo about the gearbox being, it's not an inexpensive solution, and there's a reason for that. This stuff is complex. The way that the gearbox and the components, especially Generation Two now, is set up, designed specifically to run Wirecast in the best way possible, and also be able to get multiple inputs of various resolutions. That takes a lot of horsepower and a lot of integration between the hardware and the software, and that's a huge advantage of the gear, a piece of equipment, and especially if you're doing it for professionally. It's certainly, if you have a business, certainly worthwhile the investment. I use one on I go on the road with mine, and I've been using it I do audio visual. One of my gigs is I do audio visual for events, and so I've been using the gearbox as part of that, and I run video screens at events with messaging and live feeds, and it's great for that because I can pack it and take it as a carry-on or a checked baggage. It's relatively small, but it's all self-contained. When I get to the location, I know what I got. I can set it up quickly and easily. I know that it's going to work. It's all integrated. So it's well worth the money there. And having the four capture cards already built in is nice. And the two outputs, incredibly versatile piece of equipment, especially if you're doing this professionally. So that's one way. And then the nice thing about Wirecast is you do have the option. If you don't need all that horsepower, you can always get the software,
Yeah.
Mac or PC, and you can run it, and especially if you're just getting started, and Wirecast comes in the various flavors, including Wirecast One, which is a nice entry level to get you started, and you're off and running, and something you can grow with. I mean, Stephen, you bring up the fact that it's now version two of the gear. That's at the high end, but you can get started at the lower end, and that way you learn the software, and you grow along with it, whether it's just the software or then whether you grow into the gearbox and do it professionally. So it's a
And
great way to
I
start
want to
and a great way
post
to
there.
grow.
There was a comment in the chat about it being a 10K solution. There's many different versions of gear. There's three different versions of gear, and the starting point is 5995, and that's, I mean, for an all-in-one exclusive box. You hook it up, you're ready to go and ready to broadcast. So, just want to put that out there as a a correction to that comment. They don't
Yeah.
start at 10 grand. So,
Well,
um,
here's the thing too, Steve, this is all relative too.
yeah,
Marty, I know you I can play back in my day with Fujinon lenses on beta cams being 60,000 for the lens itself. The video industry is one of these, industries that always was extremely expensive. And so, for what many people might think today is, oh my God, that's cost prohibitive, you got to really weigh what you're doing with it. If you're a hobbyist, if you're a content creator doing YouTube and it's kind of your thing, it's your side hustle, there's a million answers you can find for under, $1,000 that will get you in a really, really great place. But if you want reliability, redundancy, you want the ability to know that you're gonna be able to come away with the paycheck when you're doing it for a company who's relying on you to tell their message when it's being, broadcast. That's where products like
yeah.
the gear come in, and they're extremely valuable, and that cost is just something that is part of that equation.
So we're gonna have to finish this off here, the show, but we have a last subject that I do want to cover is the trends for 2020. For people that are watching, what should they be looking for as trends to live video on social media that you guys see? I mean, I've been following a lot of the different blogs for CES, and as we all know that that's going on right now, and NAB is coming up in April. What are some of the trends that you guys are seeing? Is it VR? I mean, that seems to be the big thing that I'm seeing. Marty, what have you been noticing as happening? I know you mentioned cell phone video, but that's kind of been going on for a while, so I wouldn't call it. What do you think?
I'm gonna take a little bit broader take on this, and I'm using my own experience as my reference here. I can tell you in our business, in my production business, it's multimedia of all kinds for everybody, every business, and it's funny because my business has really grown quite a bit. I do a lot of audio podcast editing and production. I do video. I do live video. I do basically multimedia, whether it's even on location. I would describe taking the gearbox and doing in-venue, audio visual. But all media multimedia of all kinds for all companies is exploding. In fact, you notice now, I mean, it could be like I watch YouTube a lot for ideas of what's going on, and I see every type of company. I've seen pest control companies doing videos on mouse traps of all things, all home improvement, you name it, everyone's doing it. And what's great about it is, like you mentioned, Stephen, we mentioned the cost. The cost has come down. It's become very accessible, and now it's within the reach of most small businesses can actually talk about either producing their own content or hiring production professionals to help them with that. And it's tremendous. I mean, it used to be where you just had the website. Now you need videos, you need demonstrations, you need to be able to show that. Everyone's got a podcast, and it doesn't have to be, but just doing it for fun. Could be talking about your business. I produce a lot of podcasts, and a lot of them are very niche areas. Whether it's I do stuff on HR, I do tech and all that, whatever it happens to be. And most of my clients are B2B clients who use these podcasts to work with other clients, and very niche audiences, but they're all producing. So that's why I think that's what you're going to see continue explosion there. And it's these niche audiences that are going to be, you don't need a ton of people. If you have the right audience, that's the key, but you need to be able to communicate that. Jeff, I think you're a great example of that. You're really good on camera. You've done a couple different ways of, with the fire service. That's a good example of what you do. I mean, I mean, without the video, you're not able to really explain that, and I think that's the big
Right.
thing. But everyone's getting involved in that now. There's really no excuse for you.
That is
You almost be able to
Yeah,
do that
there's a little
and
bit
get
of delay,
involved.
but that is exactly it, Marty. I mean, the thing is, this is the era where anybody can have a story, no matter how vertical, right? No matter how narrow that niche market is. The old saying is there's riches and niches, and it's absolutely true because now you've got, like you said, I mean, there are, podcasts about convenience store managers now, things that we would never have thought would be something people would actually want to listen to. But if you've got an interest in it and it's part of your world in some way, you have a tribe there somewhere. And I think you're absolutely right. The work that you're doing is benefiting, the communities where business to business operations can really tie in together, and you can share your worth and value. Podcasting, I'll tell you, podcasting is really, I think, what's on fire right now, and it's the augment of using the live stream production with that to promote and cross promote, where I think you're going to find really a major win there here in 2020.
Well, so here's a question that came up in the chat room, and I know we said we're going to end on that, but this is such a great question. I'm actually going to look over at the chat room here. Michael Ingledew, I think that's how you say his last name. He says, "What do you say to the channels like Tony and Chelsea Northrop, who have said that they're dropping 4K and sticking with high definition?" Now, this is something that people have asked me about, why I haven't switched to 4K in my studio. I even stream out most times at 720p 30, not because I can't do 1080p 30. I record at 1080p. And I mainly do it because the majority of people out there on the internet, their bandwidth, they can't do anything higher than 720 without getting a bad delayed experience. So I've kind of put off even going to 1080p streaming because of that very thing. Um, what do you guys think? The 4K, it's just not there yet for streaming.
Well, we know that it's coming, right? I mean, I'm actually using a 4K camera here as my webcam. I'm cheating. I'm using a compact Sony broadcast camera, a PXW-Z90 that's got an excellent sensor, 4K, but it's still coming in at 720 when it goes out to you guys. But there are ways that maybe you can improve a little bit of the resolution and quality without necessarily feeding that bandwidth in some ways. But you're absolutely right, because what you're doing is you want to hit the lowest common denominator so that you've got more people who can experience your
Yep.
show without interruption and without hiccups and things like that. And there's no doubt that we're going to get there, that those things are going to happen, they're going to come. But unless you're using a company like Akamai or Brightcove, one of these big enterprise CDNs, where when you upload or live stream in a single version of your file, maybe it's 4K, it immediately begins creating 7 or 8 different variants of that, where it's doing bandwidth detection between devices, and it's looking at operating systems and browser numbers and things like that. You're going to sell yourself short trying to basically high pump, thinking I'm putting out the biggest value, but now you're losing 60% of your people.
Yep.
Mobile video is where everything is at these days, and so I think you have to look at that.
And Marty, you're not doing yourself justice by doing 4K on a talk show like this. Nobody cares if you shaved today or not. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised a really good point, Stephen. I think it's always going to be a series of compromises with video and live video, and this stuff is tough enough to do as is when you're relying on not only your equipment working properly, but also things out of your control like internet bandwidth and all the complexities that go along with that. I mean, I think your balanced viewpoint and approach, there's a lot to be said for that. And also the type of content that you're doing. And you're right on target, I think, with if you're doing a talk show and it's just a talking heads and it's more about the audio content and what you're saying is most important. Is less about the video. I think it really depends on content. I mean, I've seen stuff on YouTube, and I know a lot of YouTubers have gone to 4K, and the reason I think for that is more algorithmic reasons than anything. I think YouTube is prioritizing 4K, and they all jump on that and say, "Oh, here's a way to get my videos in the search and algorithmically get more video, more views." Even though the content, who cares if it's 4K versus HD? Because if you're not watching on a large screen, you're not going to see the difference. And what you bring up also, a lot of people view on their small screen smartphones. And even though you may have 4K screens and high resolution screens on you, it's diminishing returns. I mean, the eye can't detect that kind of resolution on a small screen. It's just impossible.
Eh,
And we're getting to the point now. I mean, CS is on this week. 8K is all the talk out
Yep.
there, and that's the next thing. It's like, that would be great in a large format theater. That
Mhm.
makes sense. But I think now what you're gonna see is, where's your content being viewed? Is it worth I mean, I
Well, that's
physics come into play here.
That's what I was gonna say, like, listen, I'm not telling you if you have the ability to do 4K, I'm not telling you not to do it for, like, YouTube or any other platform. What I'm saying is for streaming, you're isolating your audience because there's a lot of people overseas that cannot view a stream that's 1080p. They have a hard enough time with a 720p stream. Now, if you're okay with isolating that and you're like, well, no, I'm doing an internal company thing and it's 4K, by all means. I mean, like some people are even using cell phones for that, like Marty stated. It is the years of the cell phones. But I really think you're isolating your audience if you can't like what I did a while ago when we used to do another show called Broadcast Now. We sent out a 5 questionnaire that said, "What is the resolution you watch it in?" And 99% of the people said we watch it in 720p. So why would and I even put in, I was like, "Do you want it to go to 1080p?" And they're like, "No, it's nice having the recording at 1080p, but my area, I can't get the bandwidth to stream 1080p." Or some people are on bandwidth caps. I guess Comcast has bandwidth caps in certain areas. So, Jeff, to play your point, 4K is coming, but are the internet providers on board with all this stuff? And that's going to make it challenging. I do believe it's coming full force for everybody, but we're at the mercy of the
Yeah.
internet companies right now.
Well, and I think, I think you have to really look at it maybe in an entirely different way, right? The way I would look at it would be this: mediocrity live streamed in 720 is no worse or better than you doing mediocrity in 4K, right? The idea is that a lot of times we look at the technology thinking this will set me apart. Marty, you talked about the algorithms. And it will add some visual value, but you know what? Make your graphics readable. Make them
Yep.
bigger where people can see them on a mobile phone. Make them where they're not sitting in front of the comments so that you've got a double layer there that shouldn't be there. Think about things like that that will create a better user experience instead of thinking that maybe, raising bandwidth is somehow going to set you apart, because that doesn't set you apart. That basically puts you at the front of a line, but there's still a line and everybody's still right behind you. And again, you're in a group. And so for you to really be original and stand out, there are other ways you can do that. And I say, fix your graphics, no yellow and purple titles. Do something that's really going to move the needle in a way that will really mean something.
And you could do, as a gentleman saying in the chat room, he says, well, they can choose whatever bandwidth that they want. Yeah, if you have a CDN that's capable of doing adaptive bitrate, where you could choose kind of like what YouTube allows you to do if you don't know what adaptive bitrate is, YouTube gives you the ability to choose whatever resolution you stream one stream to them, and they'll let you choose if you want 480p, 720, 1080, 4K if you have a 4K monitor. So if you have a paid CDN that's doing that, most of your free ones won't let you do that. I know YouTube will, I believe, will let you do it.
Yeah.
I think they're one of the few that'll let you do it. Then if you have the bandwidth, go ahead if you feel the need that you need to do 4K. I'm just saying I don't think it's something that everybody needs to run out right now and upgrade their studios to 4K. My personal opinion and being in the industry, seeing what's out there, I know there's some comments in here. A lot of people are saying, 720p is fine. And honestly, most television over the air right now is 720p. It's not even 1080p. You may have 15 channels that are 1080p that I found. I know Netflix, Apple TV, they've all gone 4K, but we're talking about terrestrial broadcasting here. So we're going to leave you with that. We've got more stuff coming next week when it pertains to some more of this content on social media. So we hope you guys tune in for this because we're kind of making a shift here right now out of the broadcasting gear, if you will, into some of these important things. We think last year we laid a good foundation groundwork on what you need and what you should be able to do. Now we want to give you some tips and techniques on how to make your content stand out. So I want to thank Mr. Jeffrey Fitzgerald from jeffandhighdef.tv for joining us.
Hey, it's always good to be here. You know that.
And he is, for those that are unaware, he is up for an Emmy, 4 of them coming up here soon. So we look forward to sharing the excitement with him as he
Yeah.
becomes the Emmy award-winning Jeffrey Fitzgerald.
Well, I appreciate it.
We also want to thank Mr. Marty McPadden from btslive.com. Thank you so much.
Actually, btslive.com, that's an old one, so if you go there, you won't see it.
Oh, that's right.
Podjam. That's
Podjam.
right, that's right. No, they won't see anything there. It'll be a blank podjam.tv, to get me.
And
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 Marty McFadden everywhere. Yeah.
and let people know what you do at podjam.tv.
Yeah, we're a production house, so we do all kinds of multimedia production, whether it's podcast editing, video editing, live stream. I'm working on several projects now. We do live events, actually physical live events. In fact, next week I'll be in LA doing an event for a client. So we do all kinds of production work, whether it's on location or audio, video, that type of stuff. So yeah,
So if you need him or Jeff, get in touch with them, Marty McPadden, Jeffrey Fitzgerald, or Jeff in High Def on the interwebs, and you can find me everywhere. My name is Stephen Haywood, the Tech Buzz. So you can find me in all those places. We really appreciate you guys tuning in to the first episode of 2020. A lot of cool things in store for this show. We're even going to have a monthly cool guest that's going to come on and talk about some high things in social media, and I want you guys to look forward to that. I think the second week of February, she's going to be joining us, so it's going to be a really fun time. And guys, we'll see you on the next one.